A black man walks quietly through downtown, calm, confident, and wearing a simple business uniform. But the racist cop doesn't see a leader. He sees a threat for racial profiling. He stops him. He hits him. He strips his dignity for sport. What he doesn't know? This man was sent to take over the entire police department. When his identity is revealed, the entire street goes silent. If you believe no one should be judged by skin color, hit like and subscribe. What happens next is the most satisfying karma you'll see this year. The morning sun casts long shadows across the busy streets of downtown Springfield, near the affluent neighborhood of Brookfield, as Officer Derek Mitchell cruised through his patrol route in his police cruiser. After 15 years on the force, Derek had developed what he called street instincts, a polite way of describing his racial bias and tendency to profile anyone who didn't look like they belonged in certain neighborhoods. His thick mustache twitched as he scanned the sidewalks, one hand on the steering wheel, the other rested near his radio. Derek prided himself on being a tough cop who didn't take nonsense from anyone. He believed in his own twisted version of justice, and in his mind, black men in business suits walking through the financial district always warranted a second look. He'd built his reputation on being proactive, stopping people for suspicious behavior that usually amounted to nothing more than walking while black. Up ahead, he spotted his target. A well-dressed black man in his late 30s, walking with confident strides down the sidewalk near some expensive houses with perfectly trimmed hedges. The man wore an expensive navy blue suit, carried a leather briefcase, and moved with the kind of authority that immediately rubbed Derek the wrong way. Something about the man's confident posture unsettled him. Maybe it was the fact that he didn't look nervous when the police cruiser slowed down nearby. Most people at least acknowledged a cop car when it passed. This man didn't even glance over, walking past a gleaming Tesla in someone's driveway. Derek's jaw tightened as he watched the man check his expensive phone and continue walking toward the police department building. Was he heading there? Did he have business with law enforcement, or was he just another troublemaker looking to cause problems? Derek's racist assumptions kicked into high gear as he pulled over to the curb, the tires crunching against the pavement. Stepping out of his cruiser, Derek placed a firm hand on his duty belt, making sure his badge and weapon were visible. His eyes locked onto the black man as he approached with aggressive intent. This was Derek's territory, his beat, and he wasn't about to let anyone, especially someone who looked like they didn't belong, walk around without answering some questions. The man noticed Derek approaching and slowed his pace, his expression remaining calm and professional. He showed no signs of fear or nervousness, which only made Derek more suspicious. In Derek's twisted worldview, innocent people were supposed to be afraid of cops. What Derek doesn't know is that this confident black man has just been appointed as the new police chief, and Derek is about to make the biggest mistake of his career. Derek stepped directly into the man's path, blocking his way on the sidewalk. "Hold up there," he said, his voice carrying that familiar tone of authority mixed with barely concealed hostility. "Where you headin' in such a hurry?" The man stopped calmly, adjusting his briefcase and meeting Derek's gaze with steady eyes. "Good morning, officer. I'm heading to a business meeting," Derek scoffed, looking the man up and down with obvious suspicion. "Business meeting, huh? What kind of business you got around here?" His tone made it clear he didn't believe a black man could have legitimate business in this part of town. "Police business, actually," the man replied evenly, his voice remaining professional despite Derek's obvious discrimination. Derek's face twisted into a smirk. "Police business? You some kind of lawyer trying to get criminals off the hook?" The racist assumptions poured out of him like poison. The man's expression hardened slightly. "I think there's been a misunderstanding, officer. Perhaps you should check with your department before making assumptions." Derek stepped closer, invading the man's personal space. "I don't need to check nothing. I'm asking you questions, and you better start answering them with some respect." The tension escalates as Derek's racial profiling crosses the line into harassment, and he has no idea he's confronting the one person who could end his career with a single phone call. The black man remained calm despite Derek's increasingly aggressive behavior. "Officer, I'm going to show you my identification to clear this up," he said, slowly reaching into his suit jacket. "Don't you move," Derek barked, his hand flying to his weapon. "Keep your hands where I can see them." A small crowd began forming on the sidewalk as pedestrians stopped to watch the confrontation. Several people pulled out their phones, sensing something was wrong with how the police officer was treating this well-dressed businessman. Some bystanders on nearby porches started watching and recording. "I was simply trying to show you my ID, officer," the man said, raising his hand slightly. "There's no need for aggression." Derek's racist paranoia kicked into overdrive. In his twisted mind, any black man who remained calm under pressure was automatically suspicious. "You think you're better than me?" he snarled. "Think you can just walk around here like you own the place?" The man's jaw tightened, but his voice remained controlled. "I think there's been a serious misunderstanding. I suggest you contact your superior before the situation gets out of hand." "My superior?" Derek laughed harshly. "Who do you think you are, telling me what to do?" His abuse of power was becoming more obvious by the second as the crowd watched in horror. Derek grabbed the man's arm roughly, spinning him around. "I've had enough of your attitude. You're coming with me for questioning." "Officer, you're making a mistake," the man said firmly, but Derek wasn't listening. His racial bias had completely taken over his judgment. "The only mistake here is you thinking you can disrespect a cop," Derek snapped. "I don't care how fancy your suit is. You're just another troublemaker to me." Without warning, Derek shoved the man hard against a nearby building wall. The black man's briefcase fell to the ground, papers scattering as several witnesses gasped in shock. "That's enough," a woman in the crowd shouted. "He wasn't doing anything wrong." Derek ignored the voices of protest, his police brutality on full display as he grabbed the man's wrist to put him in handcuffs. The man didn't resist, but his eyes burned with controlled fury as Derek's misconduct continued to escalate. Just as Derek is about to arrest an innocent man, a police car with flashing lights pulls up, and when the officer inside sees what's happening, Derek's world is about to come crashing down. Captain Lisa Rodriguez stepped out of her police cruiser, her face dark with fury as she took in the scene. She'd been driving to the department when she spotted Derek's abuse of power happening in broad daylight. The crowd of witnesses, the phones recording, the obvious racial profiling, it was every cop's worst nightmare. "Officer Mitchell," she barked, her voice cutting through the air like a whip. "Step away from that man immediately." Derek froze, his hands still gripping the black man's wrists. He turned to see his captain storming toward him, her badge gleaming in the sunlight and her expression promising serious consequences. "Captain, the suspect was being uncooperative and—" Derek started, but Rodriguez cut him off. "I said, step away," she commanded, her authority absolute. Derek reluctantly released his grip, stepping back as the black man straightened his suit jacket with dignity, despite the humiliation he'd just endured. Captain Rodriguez turned to the man with obvious concern. "Sir, are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" The man shook his head calmly. "I'm fine, Captain, but I'm deeply concerned about the behavior I just witnessed from your officer." Derek's face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. "Captain, you don't understand. This guy was acting suspicious, and when I tried to question him—" "Suspicious?" Rodriguez interrupted, her voice dripping with disgust. "Walking down a public sidewalk in a business suit is suspicious?" The crowd murmured in agreement, their phones still recording every word. Derek could feel his career slipping away, but his racist pride wouldn't let him back down. "I was doing my job," he insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. The black man picked up his scattered papers and the briefcase, his movements controlled but his eyes blazing with quiet fury. "Captain Rodriguez is about to reveal something that will make Derek's racist attack even more devastating. And when the truth comes out, Derek will realize he just assaulted the most powerful person in the entire police department." Captain Rodriguez's expression grew even more serious as she looked at Derek with complete disgust. "Officer Mitchell, do you have any idea who you just assaulted?" Derek shifted uncomfortably, his racist assumptions still clouding his judgment. "Some businessman who thinks he's above the law?" The black man stepped forward, his authority now unmistakable as he spoke with quiet power. "Officer Mitchell, My name is Chief Marcus Williams, and as of today, I'm your new police chief." The words hit Derek like a physical blow. His face went white as the reality sank in. The crowd gasped, phones still recording as Derek's world collapsed around him. "That's impossible," Derek stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Chief Williams reached into his suit jacket, the same movement that had made Derek threaten him earlier, and pulled out his official police department credentials. His badge gleamed in the sunlight, the word Chief clearly visible. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward, her voice filled with authority. "Chief Williams was on his way to his first day at headquarters when you decided to racially profile him based on the color of his skin." Derek's legs felt weak. He'd just attacked his own boss, the most powerful person in the entire department. His racist behavior had been caught on camera by dozens of witnesses, and now it was clear to everyone exactly what kind of cop he really was. Chief Williams studied Derek with calm eyes. "In my 20 years in law enforcement, I've seen police brutality, racial discrimination, and abuse of power, but I never expected to experience it firsthand from one of my own officers." The silence stretched as Derek realized the magnitude of his mistake. His racist actions hadn't just destroyed his career, they'd exposed him as everything wrong with policing. Chief Williams is about to make a decision that will change Derek's life forever. And when he reveals what consequences await racist cops in his department, Derek will understand that justice has finally caught up with him. Chief Williams straightened his tie and looked directly at Derek, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Officer Mitchell, you are hereby suspended without pay pending a full investigation into your conduct." Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Chief, please, I can explain." "Explain what?" Williams cut him off sharply. "Explain how you profiled me based on my race. Explain how you used police brutality against an innocent citizen. Explain how you abused your badge and brought shame to this department." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward, her badge ready. "Officer Mitchell, turn in your badge and weapon immediately." Derek's hands trembled as he unclipped his badge from his uniform. The piece of metal that had given him so much power he'd abused for years, now felt worthless in his palm. The crowd watched in silence as Derek's career crumbled before their eyes. The phones kept recording, capturing every moment of his downfall for the world to see. Chief Williams accepted Derek's badge and gun with disgust. "This department has zero tolerance for racism, discrimination, and police misconduct. Your actions today prove you're unfit to wear this uniform." Derek's face burned with shame and anger. "This isn't fair. I've been a cop for 15 years. "And how many innocent people have you abused in those 15 years? Williams asked, his voice like steel. "How many black men have you profiled? How many citizens have suffered because of your racist behavior?" The questions hung in the air like accusations. Derek had no answers that wouldn't make him look worse. Captain Rodriguez shook her head in disgust. "Get out of here, Mitchell. Internal Affairs will be in touch." As Derek walks away in shame, Chief Williams makes an announcement that will ensure this racist cop's behavior becomes a national example, and Derek's nightmare is just beginning. Chief Williams turned to face the crowd of witnesses, his voice carrying clearly across the street. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you witnessed today is exactly the kind of police brutality and racial profiling that has no place in modern law enforcement." The crowd listened intently as the new police chief continued. "This officer's racist behavior, his abuse of power, and his misconduct will be fully investigated. Every citizen deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of the color of their skin." Derek stood frozen nearby, watching his reputation crumble in real time. The phones recording, the witnesses watching, the media attention that was sure to follow. His racist attack on his own boss would become a viral incident. "I want everyone to understand," Chief Williams continued, "that accountability starts at the top. As your new police chief, I will not tolerate discrimination, brutality, or corruption in any form." Captain Rodriguez approached with two internal affairs investigators who had arrived on scene in an unmarked SUV with tinted windows. "Chief, these officers will handle the formal investigation and charges." Derek's heart sank as he realized the full scope of his situation. Criminal charges, civil lawsuits, media scrutiny. His racist behavior would follow him for the rest of his life. One of the IA investigators looked at Derek with disgust. "Officer Mitchell, you're being charged with assault, civil rights violations, and abuse of power under color of law. You have the right to remain silent." As Derek listened to his rights being read, Chief Williams addressed the crowd one final time. "Change starts today. This department will be reformed, retrained, and rebuilt to serve all citizens equally. Racism has no badge, and it has no place in law enforcement." The applause from the crowd was thunderous. People cheered as justice was finally served. The viral moment spread across social media within minutes, with hashtags like #RacistCopExposed and #JusticeServed trending nationwide. Derek was led away in handcuffs, the same handcuffs he'd planned to use on his boss. The irony wasn't lost on anyone watching. His racist assumptions had led to his own arrest. Chief Williams picked up his briefcase and straightened his suit. Despite the attack, despite the humiliation, he'd maintained his dignity throughout the entire ordeal. He'd shown what real leadership looked like in the face of racism. Captain Rodriguez walked beside him toward the police department. "Chief, I'm sorry you had to experience that on your first day." Williams nodded thoughtfully. "Unfortunately, Captain, it's exactly why I took this job. Systematic racism in policing doesn't fix itself. It requires leadership that's willing to hold officers accountable for their actions." The crowd slowly dispersed, but the phones kept recording. The story would be on every news channel within hours. Inside the police department, Chief Williams is about to discover that Derek wasn't the only racist cop, and the corruption runs deeper than anyone imagined. Inside the police department headquarters, Chief Williams sat across from Detective Sarah Chen, head of internal affairs. Her desk was covered with files, complaints against Derek Mitchell that had been buried for years. "Chief, what happened today isn't an isolated incident," Detective Chen explained, her voice grim. "Officer Mitchell has 17 formal complaints of racial profiling and excessive force. Most were dismissed or covered up by previous leadership." Williams studied the files with growing anger. Photos of bruised black men, reports of illegal searches, testimonies of racist language. Derek's pattern of abuse was well documented but had been ignored. "How was this allowed to continue?" Williams asked, his voice tight with controlled fury. Detective Chen sighed. "Corruption at the top. The former chief was more interested in protecting bad cops than serving the community. Racist officers like Mitchell knew they could act without consequences." Williams stood up, pacing behind his new desk. "This ends now. I want every complaint investigated, every victim contacted, and every corrupt officer identified." "Sir, that could mean investigating half the department," Chen warned. "Then that's what we'll do," Williams replied firmly. "Police accountability isn't negotiable. The community deserves justice, and they're going to get it." Detective Chen nodded approvingly. "I've been waiting years for leadership like this." Williams looked out his office window at the city he'd sworn to protect. "The racist behavior stops today. The cover-ups stop today. Bad cops will be held accountable and good officers will be supported." His phone buzzed with a text from the mayor. "News crews are assembling. The Mitchell incident is going viral. Need statement ASAP." Williams smiled grimly. Perfect. It was time to send a message that would be heard across the entire nation. Chief Williams is about to hold a press conference that will expose the full extent of police corruption and announce reforms that will make racist cops everywhere nervous. The police department press room was packed with reporters, cameras, and community leaders as Chief Williams stepped up to the podium. The Derek Mitchell incident had already gone viral on social media, and the nation was watching to see how the new police chief would respond. Williams looked directly into the cameras, his voice clear and authoritative. "Good afternoon. I'm Chief Marcus Williams, and I'm here to address the racist attack that occurred this morning, as well as the systematic problems in this department." The room fell silent as Williams continued. "Officer Derek Mitchell's assault on me was not just an attack on a black man walking down the street. It was an attack on justice, equality, and everything law enforcement should represent. Reporters frantically took notes as Williams revealed the depth of the corruption. Our investigation has uncovered years of racial profiling, police brutality, and cover-ups. Officer Mitchell had 17 complaints that were ignored by previous leadership. A reporter raised her hand. "Chief, what changes will you implement?" Williams smiled grimly. "Effective immediately, we're implementing mandatory bias training, community oversight, and zero tolerance for racism. Any officer who engages in discrimination will be fired and prosecuted." The crowd erupted in applause. Community leaders who had fought for years against police misconduct finally saw hope for real change. "Additionally," Williams continued, "we're reviewing every complaint from the past 5 years. Victims of police abuse will get the justice they deserve, and corrupt officers will be held accountable." Another reporter asked, "What about Officer Mitchell?" Williams' expression hardened. "Derek Mitchell has been fired and will face criminal charges for assault and civil rights violations. His racist behavior has no place in law enforcement." The press conference made national headlines within hours. "Racist cop fired" and "police reform" trended on every social media platform. Videos of Williams' powerful speech went viral, inspiring police departments across the country to examine their own practices. Community leaders praised Williams' courage in confronting systematic racism. "Finally, we have a chief who puts justice before protecting bad cops," said one activist. Williams knew the real work was just beginning, but today had sent a clear message. Racist cops would no longer be protected, and police accountability was the new standard. As Chief Williams leaves the press conference, he receives a call that will reveal just how many other departments have been hiding similar corruption, and his fight for justice is about to go nationwide. 3 weeks after the Derek Mitchell incident, Chief Williams stood before a packed auditorium at the National Police Reform Conference. His confrontation with the racist cop had sparked a nationwide conversation about police accountability and racial justice. "Fellow law enforcement professionals," Williams began, "the viral incident you all witnessed wasn't just about one bad cop. It was about a system that has allowed racism and abuse to flourish unchecked." The audience of police chiefs, mayors, and community leaders listened intently as Williams shared the reforms he'd implemented in Springfield. Citizen oversight boards, mandatory body cameras, bias training, and swift consequences for misconduct had already begun transforming his department. "In 3 weeks, we've fired 12 officers for racist behavior, launched investigations into 47 cases of brutality, and established new protocols that prioritize community trust over protecting bad cops," Williams announced. The applause was thunderous. Police chiefs from across the country were taking notes, eager to implement similar reforms in their own departments. Williams continued, "The Derek Mitchell case proved that racism doesn't discriminate. He was willing to assault anyone black, including his own boss. This mentality has infected law enforcement for too long." A police chief from Chicago raised his hand. "Chief Williams, how do we identify racist cops before they cause damage?" Williams smiled. "Community input, psychological evaluations, and zero tolerance for discriminatory behavior. We also review social media activity and require officers to report misconduct by their colleagues." The conference was being live-streamed, and social media exploded with support. Williams' reform and end police brutality trended as millions watched law enforcement leaders commit to change. Community activists who had fought police brutality for decades finally saw real hope. "Chief Williams proved that accountability is possible," said one civil rights leader. "His courage in confronting systematic racism has inspired police departments nationwide." Williams knew that changing centuries of racist policing would take time, but the movement had begun. Departments across America were implementing his reforms. Bad cops were being held accountable, and communities were finally seeing justice. The Derek Mitchell incident, which had started as a racist attack, had become the catalyst for the largest police reform movement in American history. As Chief Williams prepares to return home, he receives news that will take his fight for justice to the highest levels of government, and to prove that one moment of courage can change an entire nation. 6 months later, Chief Williams stood in the White House as President Johnson signed the Police Accountability and Reform Act into law. The legislation, inspired by Williams's reforms, mandated federal oversight of police departments with histories of racial discrimination. "Chief Williams," the president said, "your courage in facing racism head-on has transformed American policing. Derek Mitchell's attack became the catalyst for nationwide reform." Williams looked out at the assembled civil rights leaders, police chiefs, and community activists. One racist cop thought he could abuse his power without consequences. Instead, he exposed a system that needed change. The Derek Mitchell case had become a textbook example of instant karma. Mitchell was serving 2 years in prison, while Williams was being hailed as a national hero for police reform. As Williams signed the historic legislation, he smiled. "Racism thought it had won when that cop attacked me. Instead, it started a movement that will protect every black man, woman, and child from police brutality. Justice served. Reform achieved. Legacy secured.